Okay, if you have your Bibles with you this morning, turn to the book of Matthew. Matthew, last chapter, verse 6. Matthew 28:6. All right. I'm going to pray for us this morning. Because often I think about this throughout the week, of the process of how to preach and what to do and how to go throughout the sermon. I think, okay, I'm going to get up this week and pray. And then what happens? You know, you all live that way? Because I do. You know, I think about there's a process and this is what I want to do. And next thing you know, I'm halfway through and I'm like, you know, I forgot that very first part. So clearly, just so y'all know, if you ever come to my house, make sure to wash your own vegetables. Because I half the time don't wash them before I cook. It's okay. So.
Do you use pesticide?
I don't, but Aldi's probably does, you know, or whoever. So, if it's out of our garden, you're safe. It just got Walter juice on it because he works at tomato plants. But it is what it is. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for bringing us here today. God, I ask you to open our hearts and our minds to your word in such a way that we get on the same page. That we live in a way that we can just live life without any guilt, without any shame, and just be. Just be the people that you asked us to be. God, I ask you to give us comfort in knowing that no matter what we do, whether it's good or bad or anything, that you chose us and you love us. That our love is not contingent on our actions. That you've already freely given it to us, and that we can bask in that glory and live in it in every day. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. So Matthew, this week we're studying resurrection. That is what we're going through. At least that's what the bulletin says. That's what my little study book that I've been going through says, is resurrection. And so we go to Matthew chapter 28, verse 6. And it's one little verse, and it says that he is not here. You know, this was Matthew's account of the rock being moved away and Jesus not being there. And he says it is not here. He is risen as he said. Come, see the place where the Lord lay. So, if we digest that, we cut it down to little tidbits, little pieces, little crumbs that we can nibble on and suck on and chew on and get some good out of it. He is not here. It means he's somewhere, isn't it? You know, how many of us, and forgive me, this is a bad time to mention it because of what we're dealing with in our church and our community, but how many of us, you know, talk about when we lose somebody? I told somebody a story this week about, you know, when Dad passed away. And the first thing out of my mouth was, well, I lost my dad on this. I didn't lose him. I know where he is. And that's one of those things that by the time that had happened in life, you know, Dad and I, we had said goodbyes and sorry, and he wrote me a love letter and told me what he thought of me and asked me to do some things in that letter and things like that. I didn't lose. Maybe I lost some time. Oh my goodness, I never had that time to begin with, did I? Because God already had a set time for my dad to go home, and here I am to think anything different is selfishness in me. And so when I think about that, Jesus isn't here. He's not saying that, oh my goodness, he's lost. No, he just ain't here right now. You know, like Grandma's neighbor come down to see her the other day, and I didn't know, and nobody was there. Well, it's because I wasn't there. Grandma was gone. I'm sure Walter knew he came by. He might have met Walt. I don't know. But he come back later, and he said, you know, I knew somebody wasn't here right now, but I'd come back later because I knew somebody wasn't dead. Well, the same is true with that grave. Jesus wasn't there right there. He wasn't there then. And so we add to the next piece and it says, for he is risen. So we just know that he's not there, and we know that he had a mission, he went somewhere. And where was that? When it says he's risen, what does it mean?
His father.
What's that?
Back to his father.
Back to his Father? Absolutely. And so, like, what does it say when someone rises? What does it mean when the sun rises? It comes up. You know, it's always there. It's never changed. It's just that we can see the different angle from right there. So when Jesus rose, he never truly, you know, changed in that situation. He went somewhere else. He did something different, and he risen. So when it says he rose, kind of like it did Lazarus, to rise up from the dead means to get up, to come up. And that's what Jesus did. He rose to his Father, like Grandma said. And that next one, it says, as he said. That's important. That's one of the most important three little words in that piece. is that Jesus kept his word. That's hard to do nowadays, isn't it? Because somebody asked me this week, they asked me why I was at the office on my off day. And I said, well, I'd made a promise to work on somebody. And so, here I am. And she said, well, I'm glad you keep your word, but how are you doing that? And, and I got thinking about it. And I'm like, well, no offense, but for me, it's good enough that I showed up today. I'm sorry, it's my day off. Y'all are lucky I come out of the woods. But that's true in so many times, and even our own religion, where I realize to keep our word, what does it mean? Because there are times that I can go above and beyond. If I've made a mistake, let me fix it and make it better. But there's times where I make a mistake and I have to just accept it and say sorry and know that I have to rebuild something or transition it. And so like when it says the resurrection, it means that something has changed and we got to make it new again. And we'll see that later as we talk. And the next half of that verse is, as Matthew writes, he says that he told them that, he says, come see the place where Jesus lay or the Lord lay. And why did he show them that? Proof. Because how many of us are doubting Thomases? Because we want to see it before we can believe it. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to see it. I want to see return. I remember I had, Lord, the things I get into, I tried selling life insurance for a little while. And I didn't make it long because I was like, this is the wrong life insurance policy that I'm dealing with. I prefer mine up here. That's my life insurance policy. And so, I didn't really believe in it. And so how can I show it and prove it to somebody? I'm sorry, my lips just kind of fluttered like a duck and it tickled me. So how do we do that? The proof. Come see, lay. I want to show you something. Bart, how many times have I worked on you, and if I told you right up front and just poked and said, just prove here it's going to change, would you believe me? I doubt it. But time and time again and reiterating that, it gets to a point where we can change our own lives. And the same is true for me. That's one of those things, to relax a body in such a way that it can let go of pain is truly one of the hardest things to do. Now, can you do that spiritually? I argue most of us can't. Because it's just not the way this world has trained us to live. Now we're going to get into some meat. John chapter 20. Is that right? Yeah. John chapter 20. Resurrection. John chapter 20, and we're going to do the first 18 verses. And it says, in the first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene. She came early. Now, who is Mary? So we need a little backstory on Mary. And this is out of whim. I didn't think about this morning, so it's a fresh and brand new. Who is Mary when we talk about her in the Bible? What did she do?
Mary Magdalene?
Mm-hmm. There's one.
She was a prostitute.
Let's think about it this way. There were some actions she had, some things she did to Jesus that she's best known for. What are those? Anybody remember?
Washing his feet with the...
Yes. Yes. And what did she dry his feet with?
Her
hair. And why is that important? And also, like she said, Mary, to a lot of people in the Bible, was kind of off color a little bit, wasn't she? She's a rough crowd. She was someone, a lot of people would look down on women in different ways. And yet we have someone who humbly washed his feet, poured out whatever money, financial things she had that had value, and then used herself to dry him. How humbling was that? I mean, how many of y'all want to go rub your hair on somebody and dry her feet? I'm not going to volunteer. I touch people's feet. And all I got for protection is a little cream, and it's organic something, ho butter, or something, however you pronounce that stuff. And I'm tickling people's toes, trying to make them laugh, so they'll go, I feel good, and go home. But that's what I do for a living. So, we know Mary Magdalene. She rose up early, and she is the one that was really humbly, she loved him. And I didn't add that, and I need to, but you got to realize Mary loved him. Because to have that kind of devotion to somebody. Now, ladies, how many of you in here have went home, massaged your husband's feet, and then dried them with your hair? Nobody rose their hand. Okay. Well, I ain't going to be the first one to do it either. All right. And so she rose up early. Why do you think she did that? Because I don't know about y'all. The other night when I come slinking into Grandma's house, what time was that? 3:30, 4 o'clock, somewhere in that range? I don't remember when it was. I'd snuck in there and got me a drink and went to the restroom. Because I'd been laying there in bed. Couldn't sleep. What I was thinking about, I don't even remember now. But that's it. So I got up early that day. So I can't help but think in my own personal life, think about Mary, I bet she was up half the night thinking. Because how many of us have done that? When we get up early, it's because we're thinking. Whether it be a little kid thinking about Christmas, I've done that one. Or I'm worrying about got to go to the doctor's office and I can't sleep half the night because I got something to do. Then it never knows. So Mary got up early and it said it was still dark out. So this woman clearly hadn't even got up and had her coffee. Can you imagine getting up and going to the chicken coop and the door wide open and there ain't no chickens in there? Let alone this was Jesus, this chicken coop. And it says she got up when it was dark and she went to the grave to see this, and she saw the stone that was taken away from the grave. How? You know, what would y'all think today if you went to the grave and it was dug out? But see, this isn't just, it was dug out. Because if I went out there and went to a grave today and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, it's dug up and the grave is gone, okay, where's the backhoe? Yeah. Where's the tire tracks? There was no backhoe, there was no tire tracks, you got to realize when it was moved away, it was done in a miraculous way. So the only way to do that today, to recreate that, would have some crop dust or some crop circles out there, and one of them just kind of obliterated the soil, and next thing you know, the grave's gone. Can you imagine that back then? Because that's what they were living like. Because how all of a sudden this stone that took men to move was moved? So, that's what we see. Next verse. And it says, and then she ran. And who did she run to? Simon Peter. And who was Simon Peter in the Bible? What did Jesus say he was going to do with Simon Peter?
Fisher of men? Fisher of men?
Okay, more. What's that name translate? Anybody remember? You are the cornerstone of what I build my church. So what did they name Peter? What was that definition? What does that translate? A rock. So Mary was very distraught. She was upset because her Jesus is gone. She loved him. Oh, God, did she love him? Her Jesus is gone. And who did she go to? Thank God, who did she go to? The rock. Her grounding, her structure. And what was left with Jesus? Jesus said, you're grounded, you're here, and I'm going to build your church. And it says, and to the other disciples whom Jesus loved. What's that mean? Didn't Jesus love all his disciples? Well, yeah. But it's always different, though, isn't it? It's one thing when I hug Bart and I tell him I love him. It's another when I tell y'all the same thing. Each person has our own love for one another, don't we? Our capacity. And so, I want you to think about the capacity of love that was there. And so when Mary went to him and said, they have taken away the Lord out of the grave, and we know not where they laid him. So, now, forgive me, ladies, but sometimes things get a little over-exaggerated in the Bible, don't they? Because, what I mean by this is something may happen. Okay, good example. Grandma, don't kill me on the ride home, all right? So Grandma's pool's been leaking. And Mark come the other day and fixed it. And she come back and told me it was leaking again. And I haven't told her that I know how it's been leaking. Because there's one piece and it wiggles loose if you touch this over here. Every time I touch this piece wiggles loose. And it just is what it is. And I'm tired of fighting with it and I'm about ready to glue it on. But it's got to come on and off, so I haven't done that. And so, in the same situation, something's been wiggling here. And if we see that, let me see, we're getting back to where we don't know where he laid. And so Grandma come the other day and told me about what had happened, and that it was broken, and she was up distraught. Well, right here, Mary was expressing her distraught emotions. We don't know where he is. Who's we? Did she have a mouse in her pocket? That's what I'm getting about over-exaggerating. It's because she didn't know. And so instead of saying, hey, he's gone and I don't know, we don't know. Because then it means it's a bigger problem because that gets you to invest in the same situation. And so she brought that to them and said, we don't know where he's at. But the rock said, therefore, and he went forth and other disciples, and what they do? They went to the grave. They wanted to look. They wanted to see. So they ran both together, and the other disciples did outrun Peter, and they came to the grave first. And he stooped down and looking in and saw the linen clothes lying there. Yet, Jesus wasn't there. Why is that important? Because if you bury me in a Cadillac, doesn't mean I'm going to drive it to heaven. 6. Then come Simon Peter fallen and went into the grave, and he saw the linen clothes lying there, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying together, but in a place by itself. What does that mean? What's that, Miss Debbie?
He moved around, or somebody.
He moved around. Exactly. So he had time in that grave. He didn't just waha disappear. It means he spent a few moments in there. Because how many of y'all get up in the morning and make your bed? Jesus made his bed. And that's what it's really important when we think about it. Jesus got up and he made his bed, or the angels did. I don't know. This is me explaining it. But however, when I know that the napkin wasn't there and the linens were folded and put away, that there was intent there. It wasn't, I'm jumping up and I'm rushing out of this place. It meant I had something to do, and there is importance with where I'm at. Verse 8, and then it says, it then went in also, meaning Peter, to the disciples, and come first to the grave, and he saw and believed. And yes, 9. For as yet they know not the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead. So, Peter went in and he saw the napkin. And then it says that when the other disciples, when they saw it, they believed it. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of folded laundry to breathe to mean that somebody has intention. Let's see, 10. Then the disciples went away again unto their own homes. But Mary stood without at the grave weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked in the grave. And she saw what? 2 angels. And why is that important? Because the disciples had just been there, hadn't they? Disciples had went, and Miss Mary is still having her moment. And she wanted to see for herself, and what happened? When she looked in, she saw 2 angels. It means, for me, when I say that and I read that and I start studying that, it means that I may be having something going on in my life, whatever it may be. And I can go talk to somebody else for a moment, and I look at Bart, because usually it's Bart that I talk to for a moment. And he'll say, well, have you seen it this way? And so when I read that, I think about disciples came in and saw it, and they got what they wanted to out of the situation. And then when Mary looked in, she saw angels. She saw God, and she saw something else. And the men were just there, but then how in the world did the angels just show up? And it says she saw the 2 angels in white sitting, and the one at the head and the other at the foot, and the body of Jesus, where the body of Jesus had laid. And they said unto her, Woman, why are you crying? She said, because they took Jesus away, and I don't know where they laid him. And when she had said it, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was him. How is that important to us in our own lives today? How many of us have a blessing, and we don't even know it, standing in our midst? Jesus said unto her, Woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? She supposed him to be the gardener, so she didn't recognize him. Why is that? Why did she not recognize Jesus? She said, Sir, if thou had been here, or, had borne him hence, tell me where thou laid him, and I will take him away. Show me where his body is, because I want to take him away. Jesus said unto her, Mary. She turned and said unto him, Rabbi, or teacher. Jesus said unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. And Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and she had spoken these things unto her. So, resurrection. Jesus is alive and well. To what we can describe or say that, I'm just a mere mortal in this world, and I'm ignorant, very ignorant. though I have taken IQ tests and studied school and things of that nature, I'm still dumber than a box of rocks. Why? Because the masked beauty of God and what He entails is so great, none of us can ever actually describe it. We have no fathom or idea of what God really is. But as I read through that, and I study resurrection and the rebuilding and the regrowth of something, I think about that. Because what does it mean to be resurrected? To restore, to redo, to, remodel, if you will. So if we think about that, and we think about the body in itself, was Jesus resurrected? Yeah. Did He still have marks on His body from the life that He lived here? Yes. Because it even mentions it time and time again, doesn't it? The holes in His hands and the holes in His feet and what He lived by. So even though we may change, we may still have tattoos, we still have scars, it may be, you never know. And so there's times where I see people that have tattoos and I think, boy, I remember one time I was in Texarkana and there was this big old boy come through. I'm like, boy, I wouldn't want to have to wrestle that feller. Big old guy, tattooed up. You know what his t-shirt said? Big as day, forgiven. Sweet old man. You never known it. If you looked at him, you wouldn't want to crawl in a dark alley with him. However, after knowing him, I wouldn't mind him being on my side. Well, that's the way we are, isn't it? So to resurrect and rebuild. And so what does that mean for us in our own lives today? Doesn't mean throw it away. Doesn't mean run from our past, but to build off of it. And how do we build off of it? If you have a bad situation, a bad time in life, whatever it may be, how do we build from it? Thinking about what's going on, Miss Lola May, I can only imagine what you've been through. But I'll tell you this, when I first started, I remember having a dream, and I don't remember if I told y'all until after I'd come back, I had a dream. And I knew when I had that dream, and then within 2 or 3 days, the church had called and asked me to come preach. I knew it was just meant to be. I'm not playing with my back pocket. I'm trying to make sure I'm not hitting my speaker.
Yeah.
So, anyway. And I think about it, and I come back. And there for a little time, I was like, Lord, I can't do it. And I couldn't understand why and why I was hurting or what was bothering me. And then I come back and it's like that God called me to harvest what has already been planted. Whether it be Grandpa or Larry Strope or Larry Hopkins or, because even, and I think back and how is that fair when Larry was him and Pop were the ones together the day that I got baptized. January something, was it 92 or 94? I don't remember. And I think about that. It's not fair to be the harvester. I don't like it. And as no offense, I look around you guys are old. And here I am, I'm going to have to put most of you in the ground. And I don't like that.
Keep talking like that.
Yeah, no kidding. Come on, let's go. Let's wrestle. But it's true, isn't it? When we start really thinking about it and how feeble life is and how it changes. How many people have had to put children in the ground, and loved ones, let alone our parents and our grandparents. And we think about that, and life is vulgar in that essence that we lose. But do we really? No. Because I tell you what, the good memories of Dad and Pop in my mind are just as much as Larry. And he would teach me things to draw. I don't know if y'all knew that. Larry was kind of artistic every once in a while, and he'd teach me to show me how to draw. It was a cowboy hat and a rattlesnake, and I don't remember what he would tell me to draw, and then give me a piece of paper in church so I'd be quiet. Or play Hot Wheels with me, and things like that. And those memories are still there, and I can put them away and complain about it, and oh, woe is me. But you know what? The greatest thing is that man is not hurting this morning.
No, that's true. No.
There's a lot of us in here that have that same feeling, isn't it? Clifton, I think about that. I remember, him and I would talk blacksmithing and welding and stuff every once in a while, and he'd ask about how Pop was or whatever. And I think about Pop and himself. And what was the old man that had was it Link Auto Parts up on the square? Was one of Pop's friends.
Joe Lovelace.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I went in after Pop had passed away, and he's like, how's Grandpa? And I said, well, he passed away. And that old man went to bawling. And I didn't realize what him and Pop had until that day. And it's one of those things to where you get to a place where you just start crying, and it hurts. Because why? Could be because I'm next. But really, truly, for me, what I see is I see the beauty that's kind of fading away. You know, because there's a lot of things in the world. Our world has become very plastic, isn't it? You know, last week I was looking at somebody, and with what I do and work on, you know, I'm very intimately in a private setting with the body. So you get to know people's bodies physically. We're all different. You know, I had a guy last week had a huge long torso, little short legs. You know, so here I am barely being able to reach, yet he's no more taller. You know, he's the same height as me or lower, and I usually can reach, and I can barely reach his waistline as I'm working on him and stuff. And there's been several ladies coming through that have scars. And they're scars where they're shooting up with needles. You know, and I think it was, you know, why do you're a beautiful human being, and you're collectively, you know, coherent in your mind, and you don't act like you're on something, and you start realizing a lot of them are taking shots nowadays to lose weight. You know, there's I can't remember the names of them, and there's several of them, and I'm working on.
Ozempic and Wegovy and.
Yes, there's several, you know. And so I have these girls that are shooting up with multiple shots day by day, scarring their body in such a way that why? Just to see that they feel more beautiful. And that hurts. Because why would we change our bodies that God gave us for that way? You know, and that's something we have to realize. God is that way in our spiritual lives. How many of us are coming to church every Sunday looking for a shot? Try to get through the week. And that don't work, does it? So forgive me, as a preacher, I'm not a good one, because oftentimes I'm not here to give you a pill. I don't like it. I don't like that we're all sick and spiritually needing things. All I'm here is to cut brush and walk in front of you. Make sure you don't get shot by the devil. Because why? How many days of this week y'all got shot at from the devil? Well, apparently y'all are living. Okay, we got one that's fighting with him. Okay, yeah. 2 or 3 of us, and it can come in any way, can it? Family, friends, some idiot pulling out in front of me at Walmart. That one I don't remember. I do remember a granny with a buggy, and that one kind of was frustrating. But I got over it. I didn't say nothing to her this time, so it's perfect. It was good. Jesus was with me. Oh, God help me. I get frustrated because I get in a rush. And don't we all? We're in a rush to live and learn and make it to heaven. For some reason, God's telling us to slow down. All right, ladies, let's